book of Revelation, there are large numbers of passages that are structured so that the second half of the passage mirrors the first, either conceptually or through repeating the same words or phrases. In case you are unfamiliar with the term, a chiasm is a literary structure that follows the form A, B, B, A. It can be as simple as something like, I rode to town to buy some bread, I bought the bread and then rode home. Or it can be a little more complicated in some way. For example, the exact words might not be coupled, but the broader concepts might be alluded to. So in this case, let's change line 3 to I bought some Portuguese rolls, and line 4 to and then cycled home. Conceptually, the structure here is still chiastic, although it's a little more hidden now. Technically, when the same words are used, it is called anti-metaboly, but for our purposes, it's helpful to refer to everything as chiastic, especially as the two techniques often occur side by side in the same passage. In this example from Revelation, which is taken from chapter 1, we see a beautiful chiastic structure emerge. The text reads, "Write on a scroll what you see and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea." I turned round to see the voice that was speaking to me, and when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, and with a golden sash round his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Write therefore what you have seen, what is now and what will take place later. The mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches." To make it easier to analyze, the paragraph has been written phrase by phrase, with each phrase occurring on a new line. The opening phrase is, "Write on a scroll what you see," and 3/4 of the way through we see a very similar sentence, "Write therefore what you have seen." So I'm going to highlight these 2 for now, but this is obviously not the main chiasm because otherwise this phrase would have been at the end. That's one option. The second option is that we have overshot the end of the section, so let's keep going and see what happens. In line 2, we see the phrase 7 churches, and we see that phrase repeated in the last line of our section, so it looks like we might be onto something after all. In the second last line, we have 7 churches repeated again, and in line 3, it doesn't say 7 churches, but it actually spells them out, so that is another level of the chiasm. Next, we see the phrase 7 golden lampstands, and this is mirrored in the 3rd to last line. Further down, we have the phrase right hand, and we see this echoed in the 4th last line. There is actually a second coupled phrase in this line, so later on we will actually put these 2 different phrases onto 2 different lines. The phrase is 7 stars, and this is mirrored in the 4th last line. A few lines down, we have the phrase, "I fell at his feet as though dead." And a few lines down from that, we see, "I was dead, and now look, I am alive." So let's highlight the word dead in each case. We then have another occurrence of the words right hand. So this is going to be marked in red for now, as this use of the phrase doesn't have a couplet. Let's now make space for the instances where there are 2 repeated phrases on one line. And then let's indicate the various levels of the chiasm by indenting successive words or phrase pairs. You will no doubt have noticed by now that the phrase right hand is part of the central paragraph of this section, so that gets moved back to the same level as the other occurrences of the phrase. So here we have all the lines in which there is a phrase couplet. Now, as you can see, there are multiple lines of text that do not conform to the pattern of the chiasm. Let's highlight those in yellow. And you will notice that they have a common theme running through them. They are all words spoken by Jesus or a description of Jesus. He does say some of the lines of text that form part of the chiasm, but the yellow text is exclusively spoken by him or about him. If we move this text over to the left and then remove it for a while, the full beauty of the chiastic structure emerges. The rondo-like repetition of the phrase right hand emphasizes the importance of this idea in the text. Let's focus for a moment on the remaining text that was interleaved with the chiasm. If you like, the text that walks among the chiasm. It stands as an incredible passage in its own right, and if we read it on its own, it makes perfect sense, and we can really feel the very words of Jesus talking to us from the page. Write on a scroll what you see. I turned round to see the voice that was speaking to me, and among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, and with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. And coming out of his mouth was a sharp, double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Write, therefore, what you have seen, what is now, and what will take place later. Interleaving these two distinct passages gives us an amazingly strong literal picture of what is actually happening in the text, because Jesus is the one who's described as walking amongst the 7 lampstands, which are the churches. So the chiasm represents the churches, and that idea is reinforced by the doubling of the phrase church at the beginning and end of the passage. And walking among these churches, we have Jesus, offering words of comfort and encouragement. There's one more thing that I thought we could cover concerning this passage. Traditionally, there are 4 interpretative frameworks, or lenses, if you like, that people use to make sense of Revelation. One of these is the historicist lens, which sees Revelation as being like an unfolding prophecy of the church age. So through this lens, the 7 letters to the 7 churches stand for 7 ages of the church. But notice how the right-hand triad with the stars, that is the 7 churches, is grouped as a whole in the hand placed on John. This emphasizes the messenger relationship because the stars represent the angels of the churches, and the Greek word angelos means messenger. This sender-messenger relationship is between Jesus and John, and then between John and the churches, as he sends messengers back carrying the scrolls with them. This does seem to add weight to the argument that the churches should not be seen as symbolizing 7 church ages throughout church history. It doesn't prove it, but it adds weight to the argument. I hope you found this video both informative and encouraging. The text reveals a stunning image of the risen Jesus, and the elegant structure highlights and points to how the passage should be interpreted. Literary structure is one of many tools we can use to unpack the meaning of this amazing book. And I hope to introduce you to other tools in the toolbox. Ciao for now, and thanks for watching.